Hey everyone, if you're thinking about whether to buy a house or whether to rent, well, I'm here to help. In fact, more than that, I'm here to tell you the answer. If you Google whether you should buy or rent a house, you'll find lots of different opinions, but I'm going to tell you why there's one clear winner. The great American dream is to own your own house and to create an amazing home for you and your family. But some people think they're better off renting. There are actually probably three different answers you'll get when you search whether you should rent or buy. The first answer you'll get is where the expert just sort of sits on the fence and doesn't actually answer the question. They just give you a handful of things to consider. Boring. The second type is those that tell you to rent. They'll give you the technical and mathematical reasons why renting is the most financially correct answer. And if you live your life in a spreadsheet, then these people are sometimes right. Basically, renting usually costs less than a mortgage, so if you invest the difference, you can build up your wealth. But the problem is that this takes a lot of self-discipline to keep investing that difference, and the maths is usually correct over 1 year or even 10 years, but you probably plan to live for 50 years, so it makes the sort of maths a lot more unpredictable. This video that you're watching now is the third type, the type that says you should buy a house. There are quite a few reasons why, but I'm just going to focus on the big three. Firstly, you have to live somewhere. And most houses, they have a mortgage on them, over 75% according to a recent study. So that means you have a choice. You can pay off your own mortgage or you can pay off someone else's. Hopefully, when I put it that way, it makes the decision pretty easy. You might as well pay off your own house rather than pay it off for some landlord you've never met. For most people, this will be the reason enough to buy a house, and I've got a few other good reasons for you as well. Number two is to think 30 years ahead. Buying a house is a big commitment and you don't want to rush in or overextend yourself, but if you get yourself into a good financial position, then it's going to help set you up for life. There's a guideline in the finance world called the 28% rule. It sort of says that your repayments should be no more than 28% of your take-home pay. It's just a guideline, but it's a pretty good one. So for the 30 years of your mortgage, you're probably going to be living off 72% of your income. Quick side note there, 30 years is the norm, but over the years your pay should increase and your repayments will hopefully stay the same. So when your pay's up, repayments are the same. So ideally you can pay it off in closer to 20 years if you make it a real priority to smash your debts. So in the future, once your house is paid off, two magical things are going to happen. Firstly, you can now invest 28% of your income with no change to your standard of living. The 28% of your pay that was going into your mortgage is now freed up to invest, and you won't even notice a difference because you never had that money before. So you're going to have a lot more invested for your financial independence than someone that has to keep paying their rent. Secondly, you've now learned to live off 72% of your income. So if you're on $100,000 a year, then you only need $72,000 a year to retire at the same standard of living. If someone else is on $100,000 a year and they're renting, then they need the whole $100,000 a year to retire. Your retirement just got 28% easier because you need 28% less money to retire on. The third and final one for today is about security. Financial security, but also emotional, psychological security. On the financial side, the value of your house will probably go up over the next 30 years, and so will the average rent. So think about it, 30 years from now, would you rather own a home that is worth triple what you paid for it, or would you rather be paying 3 times as much in rent? The answer is pretty clear. On the emotional side, it's your house. You don't have a landlord telling you whether you can have a pet or not, and you don't have someone checking that you clean the bathroom every few months, and you're not living in fear of being kicked out. You can build a home for you and your family, create memories, make improvements, and live with a feeling of security that's worth more than the money. I'm sure if you ask any 80-year-old that owns their own home, they'll tell you that it was tough when they were young. They'll tell you that it was expensive. They'll tell you they had to stretch, save, and sacrifice just to get into the market. And they'll also tell you that the sacrifice was worth it. Things were a lot different back then for the 80-year-old, and don't bother trying to explain to them how the cost of the average house now is a lot more than the average salary. Even though you're right, it is a lot harder to get into the property market. It's not worth the energy of trying to argue. The reality is at the age of 80, you're going to be a lot happier living in a home you own as opposed to renting. Or worse, imagine needing the government or your family to support you. That's not a position you want to get into. Before I wrap up, I just want to talk about the downsides because there's always at least two sides to every story. Buying a house and paying it off is a good long-term financial decision for most people, but it's usually the biggest investment people make and there is some risk. Property prices generally go up in the long term, but it doesn't mean they go up all the time. Interest rates can move, buildings get old, they're going to need to be maintained and one day knocked down and replaced. You got insurance and other costs that come with owning a home, so there are a few things that can go wrong. You can also mitigate most of these risks. Firstly, you can save a reasonably big deposit. This will show you can afford the house financially, give you access to a more favourable mortgage, reduce the interest you'll pay, and give you that buffer in case any issues do come along. Know what your credit score is and how it affects your lending. Plan ahead to improve your score before you need to actually borrow the money. Subscribe to my channel and see more videos on borrowing money and your credit score. And stay in the one house for as long as you can. You know, a common trap for those that get good pay raises, they get paid more so they think that they're rich. And the bank is very happy to lend them more money. So they buy the bigger car to park in front of the bigger house, and it results in a bigger debt. The first 5 years of a mortgage is where you pay a lot of interest and not much off the principal of the loan. So if you move every 5 years and get a new mortgage, then not only are you paying all those transaction costs to brokers and banks, you're also starting the mortgage again. Here's the bottom line. Buying and paying off your own place is much better than paying off someone else's. And once the mortgage is paid off, you've got money to invest and you're used to living well below your means. Both of these things are going to set you up for retirement far, far better than having to pay increasing rents for the rest of your life. Finally, there's that psychological and emotional security that comes with owning your own home. A real peace of mind that's worth more than the money. It's not for everyone, it's not easy. You will have to make some sacrifices, but it will be worth it. Because if you want to be financially free in the future, you need to grow today.